Welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament, looking at the New Testament church. And today we are looking at the New Jerusalem, which is Revelations 21 through 22 6. Now, I'm not, again, like the other ones like this. This is a long read, a long whole chapter, and then six more verses. And so I'm not going to read the whole thing. So if you want to take the time to stop, pause here, go and read it, and then come back, or just listen to the notes that I have on this and then go back and read it, and you can apply those as you go through. However you want to do that, it's up to you. So, but just looking at this, right? Revelation 21 through 26. This is the basically the showing. It's the final scenes of the new heaven and new earth that we see, and this shows the new Jerusalem. It's a picture of the new community and home for God's people. And that's fashioned and given by God. So the scenes here, and looking at this, if you've looked at everything in Revelation so far, right, it's been, some of it's been discouraging. Now a lot of it's encouraging, but a lot of it's discouraging as well. So these final scenes that we see here help lift the spirits of the persecuted Christians up. And so John lays out his basic vision and follows it with two explanations, right? In 21, most of 21, he presents the New Jerusalem and as the site of the holy perfection, and then the rest of 22, he describes the New Jerusalem as the ultimate kind of Garden of Eden, that Adam and Eve could have experienced had they not sinned. And so what we see here, this vision involves God's creation of the new heaven and the new earth. That's described here. The old creation has gone, right? It's been destroyed. It's been disappeared. It was subject to decay, right? The sea, he also mentions, is also gone. And the sea, and like we kind of talked about a little bit here, was associated with chaos or evil or the abyss, or sometimes was portrayed as a roaring monster. And so the new creation will be free. Kind of what this symbolizes here. The new creation will be free from all evil, all such evil things. And so he describes the city as coming down from God. The new creation is a gift from God, right? And in the beginning, we see, if you've gone back and studied in Genesis, God created everything good. And in the end, God will create a new, unbroken world that we'll see here. And so the picture of Jerusalem, kind of as this, it's described as the beautiful bride, right? It contrasts the vision of Babylon, which was or Rome, right? Who was the prostitute, no, or the vision of her as the prostitute. And so there's that contrast there between the beautiful bride, which will be the New Jerusalem, and Rome, which was in itself a beautiful city, but was corrupt, and so it was the prostitute there. And so John goes down to write and proclaim that God is home now among his people. And we see Old Testament and New Testament expectations here are fully and finally realized, right? In the new heaven and the new earth, God's people will finally experience ultimate and everlasting fellowship with God, and God himself will be with them. So that's what we see in this description of the New Jerusalem. There's going to be no more pain, no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying. And in this, God states that God actually repeats Jesus' final words when he says it is finished, right? Saying, it's done. And this connects Christ's death with the assurance of eternal life. And then he goes on to say, hey, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, which is the first and last letters. If you're familiar with the Greek alphabet, it is the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet. And so what John is portraying here, he portrays God as encompassing total reality and total truth, right? All encompassing. And so God was from the beginning, and he also is the end. And so that's what we see here. And so then he gives a vice list, right? The people who won't be entering into this city, right? The group of people who won't be entering this city. And it summarized sins, right, that we see described throughout all of Revelation. And these sins characterize people who have not experienced adoption by God. It's not saying that people who have committed these sins, or even Christians who may struggle with these sins, it's people who live in these things, right? That this is who they are, right? And so now, again, it doesn't give us an excuse to do that, but it's just saying, all right, these are things that we should stay away from and do our best. And so their fate is the fiery lake. And then he emphasizes, he kind of lists some really bad things, and then he's like, all liars, right? John here apparently viewed deception, I think, as kind of the root of sin, lying as the root of sin. Elsewhere, he describes Satan, right, as the father of all lies. And so I think that's why that's in there. And then he's described it, he's taken away to a great high mountain. Um, and this is reminiscent of after Gog and Magog's destruction in Israel. I'm sorry, in Ezekiel. Ezekiel was then transported to a very high mountain as well, and we see that. And he was there. That symbolized, or he was then taken to view God's temple. And whereas John is, it parallels a lot of what Ezekiel went through. John was taken to see the New Jerusalem, what it was going to look like, and so he goes on and and we see that although believers are exposed to suffering on earth, their true life in the holy city, right, has been secured in heaven, which there'll be this sudden, which it will be suddenly revealed, right? All that, and there's not going to be any more suffering. And so the city's high wall, he describes the city's high walls, right? And 12 gates that are guarded by angels. And basically what this signifies is that they are invulnerable to attack, right? They cannot be attacked. No one's going to get through them. And so the gates bear the names of Israel's 12 tribes, and the Lamb's 12 apostles are named on the wall. And so and on the wall's foundations. And what this is this is a significant signifying a unity between the Old Testament and the New Testament, in the unity between the Old and New Testament believers. And then the angel pulls out a measuring rod. And what's interesting, again, if you parallel this with Ezekiel's vision, the measuring rod, this measuring rod that the angel pulls out is of gold. In Ezekiel's vision, it was a reed. And so, again, it's just signifying something greater. The city's length and width and height are all equal. It's all basically a cube shape, and it has a cube shape very similar to the most or just like the most holy place in the Old Testament sanctuary, right, that we see there. And so I think, again, I don't know if this is an actual description of how the city's actually going to look like, or if it's the symbolism here. And this is where I lean to, is that since the city is the most holy place, right, there's no temple in it. And so the measurements are equal, are cubed, just like the most holy place was in the temple. And so I think this is a representation. I don't know if the actual length, width, and height of the city that comes down is going to be 1,300. It's 1,380 miles. The way that it comes out, and so I mean that would be a huge cube. Looking at that now, it may be, but I think more than anything, it's a description of this whole city is the most holy place now, right? Not just the room, the most holy place in the temple, but the whole city is the most holy place now, and everything's in multiples of 12 again, that we see there. And so this is going to indicate the literal, again, like I said, this may indicate the literal dimensions of the city, or it may symbolize the perfect life of the people of God. And so or the perfection of God. It could be in those things. I lean towards that. I think it's more of a symbolism than it being actually that large, but who knows? And we'll see. Hopefully, when I know we'll see when we get there, and so that's what I'm looking forward to. Then we see, right, this description of what's inside the city. And although humans were denied access to the tree of life after they sinned, it's going to now be freely available. And the tree of life there's a tree on each side of the river, shows that there's no wrong side of the river in heaven. Like everything's equal, everyone's equal, right? And the tree produces 12 crops of fruit, or 12 kinds of fruit, each month. And I think this demonstrates God's constant provision. I think this is a symbolism here of God's constant provision. And then the other thing we see is there's no longer a curse, right? Ever since the first sin, right, the ground was cursed, humanity was cursed because of their rebellion against God. And so now, since rebellion, sin, and the curse, we see that all that's gone forever, and we live in peace with God. And so it says they will reign with God forever. We see that, and it's going to be in His radiant light that banishes night and the need for lamps. That's one thing we see a description of, is because of the light of God, the radiant light of God, and Jesus and the city. Right, there's no need for night. There's no sunset. There's none of that. There's no need for lamps or anything like that. It's just going to be brightness, light all the time, and so it's just a beautiful scene that we see here. And so that just kind of sums up that what the New Jerusalem is going to look like. And again, you see the things, the descriptions of gold and diamonds and sapphire, and I can't imagine what it really truly is going to look like. I think this is John using the things that the prettiest and most beautiful things that he knew at the time to describe what the New Jerusalem's going to look like. But I honestly think it's probably selling it short. And so it's one of those things I think that we have to look forward to what heaven's going to look like. And so the other thing that I didn't put in the notes here, but the other thing I wanted to hit on, and I kind of hinted at this I think yesterday or the day before, is a lot of people think, oh, we're going to be called up to heaven in this clouds like city and live above the earth and in this other place that's called heaven. But if you actually look at it, heaven's coming down to earth. There's going to be a new earth, right? New heaven, new earth, and there's going to be a new city, or heaven's going to come down and be on the new earth. And so that's the interesting thing that we see there in the way that Revelation describes this is and what the new earth's going to look like. I don't know. It says there's no ocean. Um it's large. It's really, really large. 1,300 miles. I think that's a description of how, like, I mean, you think 1,300 miles wide, 1,300 miles long. I mean, that is a huge city, right? And so I think it's going to be extremely large. It's going to be extremely huge. But it's going to be perfection. And so that's one of the things I want you to emphasize on and remember, because a lot of times I think we get that wrong about what heaven's going to be like. And so I want you to emphasize and understand that. And so as always, I hope y'all learn from these. I know I went through this kind of fast. It's a lot to get through. Probably could have split this one into two or three different sections, but it's all one section as you read the Bible. And so I wanted to keep it there. But as always, I hope that y'all are learning from these. I hope that you're pulling from them. This is the next to last one. Tomorrow's our last video we're going to go over, and that's basically Jesus is coming. It's basically reminding us that Jesus is coming. We'll read that and look at that, and then we'll be done with this study. So as always, I encourage you still to subscribe to the channel. We're going to come up with some newer things, newer videos, do things like that. Probably not daily, but still put some of those out. And as always, I more than anything, I appreciate everyone who takes time to watch these, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day.